Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS 1090J. Man, listen, I got a story for y'all. I've been saving. I wanted to put out a couple more positive videos, give y'all a better understanding, and just really to let it be known that this channel is not for the glorification of prison and, more importantly, prison violence, because my channel, a lot of my videos detail, a lot of the things that go on. I try to be as brutally honest as possible. I try to have my guests as brutally honest as possible because I feel like that's the best way to have this information served to y'all. So I got a story for y'all. I'm not going to name which prison this took place at. It was an adult facility. Adult facilities, every reception center is adult facility. I have my YO pulled, so I went through multiple reception centers on the adult side, not on the youth offender side, as well as I touched down on an adult compound. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of where this happened at due to the nature of this video. More or less what happened was I was sitting in the dorm contemplating how I can make some money. At this point, I'm around grown men. I'm really not trying to do the whole extortion game. It wasn't as common, and when it did happen, it brought a different level of violence because it wasn't always respected by everyone. You know what I mean? You might extort somebody and someone else feels like he's tougher than you and he wants to extort that same person. So he might step down on that person while you already extorting that person, and now you got to wet him up. You know what I'm saying? You might have someone that tries you just because they want to take buddy you're extorting from you. Now you gotta wet them up. There's so many situations where your hand can get forced, and I mean, we had people under extortion, to be honest, but they weren't really getting that much money to begin with. The risk wasn't worth the reward. We weren't really getting that much. And it's not that I was scared of anybody or that my people were scared of anybody. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with the extortion game. How you have to extort somebody, what it takes to make that person break it off, because it's not jits. When we're running down on people, we're running down on people that have been down 5-10 years. We don't care about your time. We don't care about what camps you've been at, who you stabbed. We don't care about none of that, because we're going to do it too. And you're either going to break it off or we're going to do it to you, and we're going to clarify that real quick. You know what I mean? And if it gets to a point where we see you're not going to break it off, we don't really want you in the dorm at that point, so we want to get you up out of there, and we're going to have to wet you up. So there's so much violence associated with the extortion game, and we were all chilling. At this point, we had a lot of K2 in the dorm. We had a lot of tobacco in the dorm. We didn't really want to mess that up by causing violence, getting the dorm searched, and then everybody loses their stuff. You know what I'm saying? So what did I do? I tried to come up with a hustle. There was one tattoo man in the dorm at the time, and he belonged to the Unforgivens. The Unforgivens is an all-white organization. He wouldn't tattoo anybody that wasn't white. It's just, that was his thing. And he wouldn't outwardly say that. He wasn't going to be like, oh, I'm not tatting you, you're black, or I'm not tatting you, you rock with the blacks. Nothing like that. He would just say a ridiculous price for a tattoo that nobody is going to pay, obviously. So no one even bothered with him. Tattoo guns in Florida State Prison are made out of electric shavers. Just regular little shavers, you know what I mean? They used to be on the canteen for $50. By the time I hit prison, they were taken off canteen, but people still had them. Something that costs $50 on canteen is going to cost even more once it's been taken off of canteen. And the fact that this electric razor can be turned into a hustle It can be turned into a tattoo machine. And then, I mean, not only that, but to be able to shave your own face and your own head if you're bald, it's a lot more sanitary than using the clippers that everyone else uses, because I'm not sure what it's called, but when you go to a barber shop and they got that blue liquid that they clean the clippers with, ours used to get watered down so many times over because they don't pay for new cleaning liquid, you know what I mean, to sanitize it. So they would just water it down. So you might have a guy that has AIDS and he tells people he has AIDS, you know what I'm saying? He respects you enough to tell you, hey, I have AIDS, I just shaved and the clippers cut me. You're not going to want to get shaved next, and in some situations the COs force you to get shaved next. So all you can hope is that, you know, the liquid isn't 99% water. So having an electric shaver saves you from that. I'd never had hair on my face in prison like that. I didn't have nothing to really worry about, you know what I mean? But the fact that you could make it a tattoo gun, those electric shavers were worth $100 in canteen, $100 in K2, $100 in tobacco. Whichever way you wanted to pay, somebody would pay you for that tattoo machine. Not only that, if you own the tattoo gun, or if you own the electric shaver, you can rent it out to a tattoo man and make a percentage off of every single tattoo that he does. Or he'll just pay you up front. He rides out with the gun for a few tattoos. You're sitting on a certain amount of canteen. On top of that, he's going to pay you double, because if he gets caught and you lose your machine, he has to pay the full value of that. So if he's like, all right, I'm going to give you $50 to hold it down for this amount of time and another $50 just in case something happens, you're good to go. You know what I mean? You might get free tattoos because you're letting them hold the gun. There's a lot that can be done with the tattoo machine. It just so happened that there was one other person in this dorm that had a tattoo machine. I was cool with the Unforgiven that had it, but I wanted my own. I wanted to tattoo. I tattooed a little bit at the youth offender prison just with pick and pokes. I had tattooed in high school a little bit. So I was like, you know, this is something that I can sit down and practice. I was always drawing in prison. I was drawing people tattoos in prison all the time. I never really sold my art because I liked the freedom of it. If I want to draw something, I'm going to draw it on my time. I don't want you to tell me to draw something, you pay me up front, and now I feel like I have to do this in this specific amount of time. I'd rather just do it on my own time. And I had people that were willing to get tattooed by me just by seeing my artwork, my drawings and everything else. So there was a guy that had a tattoo machine. He had, you know, an electric shaver, brand new. Super nice quality. You could tell he took care of it. And I only knew that because I asked his bunkie. Now this guy was about in his 40s. And I mean, he had been down probably close to 20 years. He's not new to this. He always kept to himself. He never bothered anyone. I heard he was dangerous. I heard he stabbed someone up pretty bad at another compound. They had to get air flighted. I heard he kept a knife on the rec yard. I did my homework on this guy. And, you know, I had another person step to him and ask him if he wanted to sell it. He said no. So, you know, I know at this point that if I try to get this tattoo gun, I'm going to have to make something happen. He was into homosexual activities, and we didn't really want that in the dorm that we were in. One thing about him, though, was he was very private with it. And what he used to do is, it was actually the Unforgiven's bunkie. They would both stay back from chow. Everyone else would go to chow. The Unforgiven's bunkie would go in the guy's room that had the electric shaver. He would put up a sheet. They did what they did. And in return, he would pay him in canteen. What's crazy about this is the guy performing the act said he wasn't gay. He was only doing it to eat. He'd been down 10 years. Most of his family died. He only does these things for money. And the guy that, with the electric shaver that was paying for that, that's what he did. I think he had a life sentence, and he's been down 20 something years. So that's what he was into. And like I said, he was respectable about it. He didn't say anything out loud. They didn't even sit together at any point in time in the day room. They never communicated, nothing. It was just a very, very down low thing that a lot of people weren't aware of unless you saw the sheet go up. So one day I was on the top tier, and we had this guy get moved in, maybe a week ago. Second he came in, wild dude. He was from Chicago. He's a GD. He said he was from the Hunnits. I don't know all the Chicago hoods, but he said he was from the Hunnits, the Wild Hunnits. And the second I met him, I could tell he had something wrong with him mentally. He just seemed very violent and very, like no self-control. Like would just snap at anything, ready to go. Didn't seem like you could really have a conversation with him. Like he just didn't understand things. So I started talking to him, and we started talking about tattoos. He was like, yeah, I'm trying to get tatted up. I'm trying to get, he had a bunch of tattoos across his forehead, tattoos all over his face. He was tatted up a little bit. And I told him, if you can get me a tattoo gun, I'll tat you up. You know what I'm saying? You'll be my billboard. Either I'll buy the gun off of you, I'll buy the shaver off of you, and you can buy tattoos. Or if you get me the shaver, I'll tat you up for free until we get to what we agree on is worth $100. So he was like, well, who got razors in here? Who got an electric razor? So I told him, the guy in that cell has one. And he asked about the guy, and I told him basically what I have found out. And I told him no one really cares about him. And he partakes in, homosexual activities, so no one's really worried about him anyway. And that's when he told me the story about something that happened to him. To my surprise, he told me that being gay has no effect on his respect for somebody. And the reason he said that is at another prison he was at, he was on the pull-up bar. And as he did a pull-up, he actually had his shirt off. Someone ran up behind him and cut his stomach open all the way across with a box cutter, and his guts fell out of his stomach while he was on the bar. He drops down, and when he actually dropped and hit the floor, that's when his guts fell out and literally just hit the sand in front of him. He said he hit the floor, you know what I mean? And he's shaking and bleeding out, and he has things hanging out of him, intestines, whatever it is. He said the only person that ran up to help him, his people started going to war. His people started stabbing up and attacking the group that did that to him, but no one actually went to help him. They were more focused on getting at the people. He said the only person that helped him was some random guy who was a homosexual. And when I say that, he was feminine. He wasn't a guy that just got down. He was feminine. He played the role, eyebrows tweezed, everything. You know what I mean? Acted like a female, had a female nickname. These are the guys you really want to stay away from. There's usually nothing but problems surrounding these type of guys. That guy ran up, started putting his guts, sandy and all, in his stomach, and was trying to squeeze his stomach together. Wrapped a shirt around his waist and was trying to compress everything. And when he got air flighted from the rec yard, they said that is what saved him. So that is what changed his respect and his viewpoint on homosexuals in prison. But that didn't stop him from wanting to get this tattoo machine. It was just something he brought up in a crazy story. You know what I mean? His roommate that he was in the room with was a pretty big kid from St. Pete. And his roommate was about to go home. His roommate only had like 2 weeks left. versus the GD from Chicago. He had some years to go. I think he had maybe like 14 years to go off a 20-year sentence. So he's in there for a little bit. Basically, we formulate a plan. What's going to happen is when that sheet goes up the very next time, and we know that both the guy with the electric shaver and the guy who performed sexual acts on him is in the room and they're in the middle of what they're doing, the GD from Chicago is going to run in there. He's going to tear down the sheet. He's going to let them know what time it is. Either he's going to give it up or he's going to wet them up. Now, this is the thing. He didn't have a knife, the GD. He didn't have one. His bunkie didn't have one. We had knives, but we're not going to give a knife to an opposite gang member. So he actually had to do this with a lock. He got a lock and a sock, tied it up, and basically everybody waited for the perfect opportunity. You know what I mean? And what ended up happening is I was on the top tier. The guy's cell was on the bottom tier. So I'm standing on the top tier with my people. And we're just standing there, we're talking, hanging out. And he runs up to me. He's like, hey, you still want to do that? The sheet's going up. And I basically told him, man, listen, you don't have to do this specifically. But like I said, if you get me that tattoo gun, if you get me the electric shaver, we're locked in. Whichever way you want to do it, I'll buy it off of you or I'll run ink on you. So he said, I bet. He went in his room, he grabbed a lock, and within 2 seconds, he shot off into that room. The second he shot off into that room, the sheet went down. The guy was in the middle of performing an act on the other guy. So he was on his knees and everything. He ran in there. You know, he said, basically, give everything up. I only said I wanted an electric razor. In his mind, he was like, if I'm gonna rob him, I'm taking everything in this cell. And there was a lot of canteen in that cell. All I started hearing was brr, 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 brr. They started going at it in there. Come to find out after, when I hear about what happened, he went in there and just hit the guy in the face with the lock and the sock and then told him, give me everything in here. You know what I mean? Already busted him open and then said something. He didn't give him a chance to react. Now, the GD from Chicago is a short dude. He's like 5'7", 5'8". The guy that he's doing this to is like a good 6'2", and he's a big guy. Works out every single day. So when they start fighting in there, the GD's roommate sees what's happening, and even though he only has 2 weeks until he goes home, he immediately runs in. So now they're jumping the guy. The dude that was performing the sexual act, he immediately threw his hands up, said, I didn't do anything. I don't want any part in any of this. Just do it. They told him, get out of the cell. So he got out of the cell quick, went back and sat on his own bunk. And the GD from Chicago, he had the lock and the sock around the guy's throat. And he was basically on his back choking him out. And he held him back into a position against the toilet while his roommate stood over him and just repeatedly punched dude in the face until he went to sleep. And I mean, you could see the guy struggling, getting choked out. And then just from the hits, you just seen his legs relax. He was out of there. They let him go. He hit the floor. They got into the locker. They took all the canteen. I mean, it was at least like $150 worth of canteen. But to take the canteen out, they have to do it on camera because there's cameras in this dorm. So they're stuffing it in their clothes. I mean, he walked out with a bag, like you could tell. And he goes into his cell with it, dumps all the canteen out. Then he has some of the other GDs come in his room, and they start dispersing the canteen into different rooms in case the COs come in and try to crack down. Then he can be like, look, I don't have $150 of canteen in here. I don't know what you're talking about. The more people that go in the room on camera, the harder it is for them to solve. basically the whole time this is happening, I'm still on the top tier with my people, and I'm watching, and Buddy's just laid out on the floor. You know what I'm saying? He's not moving at all, and there's blood everywhere in this cell. I mean, he was hitting him up with that lock bad, and then dude split him just from hitting him. So you could hear the growling noise, like he's just having a hard time breathing and everything. And basically what happened is the dude that was performing the sexual act was told to go in there and clean it up. You know, clean up the blood, help him out. You know, you was just in there doing this to him. You know, that's your friend. Help him out. Pick him up. Get him right. Because if the COs come in and he's laid out like that, there's going to be a huge investigation. They're going to call backup in here. It's going to get torn down. You know what I mean? We didn't want... No one expected it to happen like this. Nobody wanted it to happen like this. Like I said, we were avoiding extortion because we didn't want to result to violence. And this just blew out of proportion. And even though I didn't necessarily participate in the action, I was the one that wanted the electric shaver. And I told him, you know, get it how you got to get it. I don't really care how you get it. And this is what he did in return. So, you know, Buddy goes in there and wakes him up. And, I mean, he barely even woke him up. He more or less dragged him into his bed. While he's doing that, blood's just leaking out of him. It's all over the floor. He took the dude's uniform off, like the shirt. He's wiping up all the blood with it. He took his pants off. He dressed him in a new uniform. And he wrapped the shirt around his head, and he just kept bleeding into it. So he's taking toilet paper and toothpaste and just trying to plug up all these split open parts of his face and his head. So I mean, they end up cleaning up a good bit of the blood, and the CO comes in. The doors pop, so everybody's like, troll, troll. And we're still standing at the top. Because technically on camera, we didn't do anything. You know, and if they try to say that we told him to do this, that's my word against his. Whatever, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But there's a significant amount of blood splatter still on the floor. You know, it's not in as much of a pool as it was. There's some streaks from wiping it. And then, I mean, there's just splatter marks that you can still see, you know? I had walked by the cell just to peek. And pretended I was going to my buddy's cell. So I saw, and dude's laid out, you know, just laying on his bunk. He had the blanket over him, and, you know, the guy turned his body so it looked like he was sleeping, facing the wall. Whole time he's bleeding out all over his bunk. And CO walks past and doesn't even glance in the room. So we're all like... You know what I'm saying? But had this dude been dead, he would have stayed dead for a little bit long. I mean, yeah, you're going to stay dead, but he would have stayed undiscovered for even longer. Like, this CO just walked by like nothing happened. You know what I mean? And what's crazy is dude didn't get up, like, at all, period. He just wasn't getting up. He wasn't waking up. So at this point, we're thinking he's dead. You know? Come to find out, the electric shaver wasn't even in his room. So either I tipped him off when I asked him if he wanted to sell it and he thought something was up, or someone else suspected something and went and told him. I don't know who had the electric shaver. It became, you know, gang politics got involved because the GDs wanted it. The reason they did this was for that specifically. I wanted it specifically. We want to know now who tipped him off because we're pissed off. If this goes south, a lot of people are at risk. And we don't know if he's even alive at this point. So we don't want this to be a blank mission at the end of the day. And we couldn't figure out how he got tipped off. You know, we pressed the kid that was doing the thing to him, and he started crying, saying he doesn't know nothing, whatever. Them boys got $150 worth of canteen, and it just stayed like that. You know what I mean? And when count time came, we thought that if he was dead, this is when they're gonna find out, because you have to sit up for count time and you have to say your DC number. So I'm on my door watching the COs go to his cell, and apparently he sat up and said his thing. So now we know he isn't dead. You know what I'm saying? We came back out for the rest of the night, showers, TV, whatever. He never came out of his room. He just laid in the bed the whole time. Fast forward to the next morning, we all go to breakfast and he comes out of his cell. Bro, I mean, this man's whole face is swollen, splits all over his face. His jaw looks broken. Like, everything is just, there's no way he's going to be able to go to chow and not get flagged down by his CO. And at that point, he's either going to tell or go under investigation, and there's going to be an investigation inside of the dorm. So everyone's telling him, like, yo, don't go to breakfast. Like, don't go to breakfast. Just stay in your room. But at the same time, all his canteen's gone. So he doesn't have food. So he's going to breakfast. And it's kind of a check-in move. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a check-in move, because you know the second they see you, you're going to confinement. You're going to go to the nurses station first. So it's kind of like a way that he can go to the nurses and get help without saying, hey, help me. You know what I'm saying? I don't really blame him because of the situation he was in, how bad he was physically hurt at this point. I mean, he couldn't even talk. He wasn't even answering. He was just drooling, like he couldn't come up with words. You could tell something was wrong. We all go to breakfast. You know, he had a hat on his head, which is covering up the majority of everything. But he's bleeding as he has the hat, so he starts wiping it. He's smearing blood all over him. We get inside of the chow hall. The COs ain't really looking. This man sits down with his food, has the tray in front of him. He took a bite of the food and threw up blood all on his tray. And everyone at the table with him immediately jumps up. He threw up blood on the tray and he dropped on the tray. You know what I'm saying? Looked like he passed out, like he fainted in the bloody food. And at that point, CO's called backup. What I heard was he got air flighted. I don't know the extent of anything after that. All I heard was he was air flighted from the compound immediately after. And there was no investigation. I don't remember even hearing that they came to the dorm to check cameras to see what happened. These COs didn't care. And I don't know what happened to him. Nobody knows what happened to him. Come to find out, about a week later, there was a white GD in the dorm. And, I was cool with that white GD. He respected me because there wasn't as many white bloods as there was white GDs. So he knew I had to be about mine to stand where I stand at and stand with who I stand with. So it was a mutual respect. And, he stepped to me and he was like, hey, I got an electric razor. And if you ever feel like tattooing, you can use it as much as you want. So at that point, I knew he was the one that got the electric razor. And the GDs were trying to find out. He didn't even tell his own brothers that he had got the electric razor. But he knew at the end of the day, I wanted it. I was cool with him though. We were cool. And whenever I wanted to tattoo with it, I could tattoo with it. And eventually that became mine. A little bit more time went by. He was like, hey, bro, keep it. So basically, I got what I wanted. There was just a certain way he had to go about it. He was cool with the guy that he got it from, that basically everything happened to. He couldn't have just handed it over to me, because then his own brothers would have been looking at him crazy. But more or less, all of this transpired over an electric razor. A life can be worth less than $100 in canteen and ramen noodles and honey buns. Like I said, it's not for glorification. It's just to expose the truth, to let you know what can happen. You can die over the simplest things. And in my case, my words are so powerful that when I tell somebody, I don't care how you get it, just get it. I didn't expect how far things could go. I didn't expect that somebody could get put through that over something as simple as that. And that wasn't what we tried to do, you know? If the man had said, hey, yeah, I'll sell it to you for this, I would have bought it for that. When the guy went in there and did that and said, hey, give it up, and he gave it up, it would have been left at that. But when that man went in there and decided to hit him up, and the violence just escalated, it got to a point it shouldn't have ever gotten to. That's how easily things can happen, and that's how dangerous things can get. I hope y'all are able to learn something from this story. But hey, I appreciate all y'all, everybody rocking with me. For everybody that's been asking, I did the live through Streamlabs. I didn't really like it, to be honest. So when I do live, don't worry about the other donation link. You can just go ahead and donate through the super chat if you want to. And then I also have my PayPal linked in the description of all videos if you guys want to donate. And I mean, I appreciate every single person that does. No matter the amount, it is much appreciated. So hey, shout out to all y'all. I'm rocking with y'all like y'all rocking with me. Till next time.